Morning again. So glad that you guys are here this morning, and I'm excited that I have the opportunity to speak with you guys today about our I Like Giving series. Real quick, how many of you guys are dying from the allergies the last few days? Anybody? All right, the last couple days I've been sneezing uncontrollably, and my eyes are watering like crazy. So if you think I'm crying, just realize it's the allergies. Just to give me a break. But we are here today, and I'm going to wrap up our series about I Like Giving. How many of you have enjoyed this series so far? Anybody? All right, I'm going to tell you, I have loved it. I was super excited when I heard that Pastor Brian was going to be doing this series. And I think I said it a few weeks ago, that if you haven't had the opportunity to read the book, I Like Giving, I would highly recommend it. It's a really easy read. It's got really big font. And pictures, so you can get through it pretty quickly. But really, it changed my mentality on giving a lot. So often we think of giving as financial and having to give money. But this book really presents other opportunities and ways that we can serve others by giving of our talents and our time. And it really brought to the front of my mind the opportunity to serve others in certain instances and ways that I probably would have passed by before. I kind of notice now, and I'm looking for more opportunities to serve others. So if you haven't read that book, I would really like to recommend it. Well, as we've seen over the last few weeks from this series, I Like Giving, we have learned what giving actually does for us. It can make us happier. It's always better to focus on somebody else instead of ourselves. And to look for ways that we can reach other people. Albert Schweitzer, who was a French-German theologian, said the only really happy people are those who have learned how to serve. He won the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize, so he's got to be somewhat credible to tell us that the only happy people are those who have learned how to serve people. And we're such a consumeristic society today with all our binge watching of Netflix shows. Anybody other than me? I just continually watch The Office over and over. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's great. But we're such a consumer society that we don't really look to serve other people. We always look at what I need to do for myself to be happy, when he's telling us that the only really happy people are those who have learned to serve others. So today, as we wrap up the I Like Giving series, I'm going to talk about giving of our time and our talents to serve and reach other people. While I was doing some research for this, some health reasons popped up that I saw that shows why serving others can be beneficial to our health. And we're all looking for health things. If some of you are those weird people that don't like to eat ice cream and stuff, I mean, I feel sorry for you. But here's some other reasons you have to make you just a little more happy. First of all, it does bring more happiness. They said that certain parts of your brain light up when we're serving other people. And it creates a chemical called dopamine, which does, in fact, make us happy. So they're telling us that when we serve others and that when we're doing more for others than ourselves, it does create more happiness for us. Another one is it can reduce stress. And as stressful as today's culture is, with constantly having to get to work and run our kids to sporting events and get to church and family and career and finances, we're pretty stressful. So good timing, whatever that was. It can reduce stress. It also helps relieve pain, believe it or not. There was a study done by Pain Management Nursing that said that serving others does help relieve physical pain. And it also gives us a longer lifespan. Just by serving other people has all these positive health benefits that we can bring about strictly by looking to help other people. Which all those are great reasons and obvious reasons why we should want to serve and look for opportunities to help others. But in my preparation for today, I was trying to figure out how to go about talking about serving other people. And it came to my mind, and I really thought that's too often when we're asked to help or opportunities are presented to serve other people, that we immediately look for a reason or an excuse not to do that, or why I can't do that right now, or it's just not for me. So what I did is I grabbed a couple stories out of the Bible, pretty prominent figures in the Bible that were asked to serve or were presented with opportunities that immediately either had an excuse or a reason why they couldn't do that, or were presented with an obstacle as to why they can't do that or couldn't follow through with it. Because I think we have the same things, whether we want to admit it or not. We all see a need, or we're all asked to do something, but a lot of times we're just not too willing to throw away those reasons or excuses and to get involved. So we're going to look at a few stories, and we're going to bounce around on some verses in the Bible. But the first person that I came to that we're going to talk about is Moses. If you haven't grown up in church, I'll just give you a quick backstory and catch you up as where we're going to be reading from and what's going on. So Moses was an Israelite who was in Egypt. They were growing rapidly in number, so Pharaoh told all the midwives that any male baby they were to throw into the river. You could let the females live, but the males needed to be thrown into the river. Well, the midwife who delivered Moses didn't do that. Obviously, she put him in a basket and sent him down the river. And Pharaoh's daughter found Moses, and so he was basically adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, and he grew up with Pharaoh in Pharaoh's house. And so years have passed, and he grew up, and the Israelites are enslaved by Egypt, and he walks by an Egyptian who is beating an Israelite, and it angers Moses, and he kills the Egyptian, and then he gets scared, and he bolts. He leaves Egypt, and years have passed, and he eventually is married, and he's got a family. So this is where we're going to pick up the story, as Moses is tending to his flock, and he stumbles upon a burning bush, which is God, and audibly God is talking to Moses through this burning bush. And God tells Moses that I have heard the cry of my people, the Israelites, and I'm going to deliver them from the hands of the Egyptians, and I want you to be the person for me that goes and speaks to Pharaoh and gets him to release my people. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like if God was talking to me through a burning bush, I might go ahead and just do what he's telling me to do, because that doesn't happen every day. I mean, that's pretty shocking, and that's a good way to get somebody's attention. But Moses immediately throws out 5 excuses as to why he can't do that. Instead of seeing this opportunity and just being in awe of what is going on in front of him, excuses immediately come to his mind. So we're going to look at these 5 excuses that Moses has. The first excuse that Moses tells God why he can't do that is, I'm not good enough. Exodus 3:11 says, but Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? He said, God, who am I? I am a nobody. You're talking to me, I realize, but come on, I mean, I'm not good enough. Who am I? There's got to be somebody else with more talent, more skill, that would be more willing to do this. I'm sure you can find somebody else. So the first reason that he immediately says is, I'm just not good enough. Too often in our own life, when we have these opportunities to be able to help others or to serve, we may think, I'm just not good enough to do that. That's not my skill. That's not my talent. There's people that can do that better than me. I'm going to leave that up to them. So Moses was in the same boat, and he said, I'm not good enough. The second reason or excuse that he gives is, I don't have all the answers. Exodus 3:13 says, Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. And they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? So he now says, all right, I'm not good enough, and now I don't have all the answers. They're going to come to me, and they're going to ask me these tough questions, and Pharaoh's going to present me with stuff, and you know I don't know everything, so I definitely don't have all the answers. Again, I can't do this. There's somebody more talented, right? So when we get opportunities to serve, we may think, I can't do that. I don't have all the answers. I can't go next door and speak to the little kids. I mean, I don't have all the answers that they're going to ask me. And as we know, kids can come up with some great questions. But luckily, you guys have Google nowadays. So if they don't know it, just give them a second, Google it, and then you got an answer, right? But unfortunately, Moses didn't have that, and so he's using not having the answers as an excuse. The next one that he sees is, people won't believe me. Exodus 4:1 says, Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, the Lord did not appear to you? So now we're saying, well, people are going to doubt me. They're not going to believe that you have sent me here to deliver them. I mean, I grew up in Pharaoh's household, and then I killed an Egyptian, so I've got all these faults that's wrong with me, so they're not going to believe me. I mean, I don't have the credibility that they're looking for to be able to reach them. Again, just excuse after excuse, but it doesn't matter to God. The next one is, I'm a terrible speaker. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." So he's using again an excuse basically of I'm not good enough. So I've already told you this stuff, but I'm going to have to talk to Pharaoh, and I'm going to have to speak and probably sound professional, and I can't. Like I'm slow of speech, so again, just not good enough. You got to get somebody else. I mean, I'm laying pretty good reasons as to why you don't need to use me. Right? So we can all come up with excuses and reasons in our own life to keep from serving God and submitting to what it is that he wants us to do, when in reality, God just wants us to say yes. Right? It doesn't matter if you're not the best speaker. If you're doubting yourself and you're doubting the reason why God called you, then really you're doubting God and his ability to work through you, all because you're looking for an excuse. And his last one was, I'm not qualified. Exodus 4:13 said, "But Moses said, 'Pardon your servant, Lord. Please send someone else.'" So he lays 4 decent reasons, and then finally he says, just send somebody else. Like, I don't want to do this. I've given you these good reasons, but if this isn't enough, just please send somebody else. When we are presented with opportunities to serve other people, the first thing that we should be willing to do is just say yes. But instead, we want to find reasons to keep us from serving other people because we are busy and we all think that we have valid reasons, but we really don't. Because of Moses' decision to serve God, lives were changed and great things happened. Moses eventually said yes, agreed to go, had to go to Pharaoh a few times and some plagues came, but Moses was able to bring about a great change for the Israelites, and he got them out of Egypt, all because of his willingness to say yes. Lives were changed for thousands of years, all because of one man's willingness to say yes. Imagine what each one of us could do if we all said yes to God instead of looking for a reason or an excuse to get out of it. God wants a willing heart. The next story we're going to look at is Jesus healing a paralytic, which is in Mark 2, 1 through 12. This story, Jesus is in a house and he is preaching, and the house packs out. It is full, and they can't get any more people in there, and he's there to speak. And so we're going to pick up this story in Mark 2, 1 through 12, which says, "A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get to him, Jesus, because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, 'Son, your sins are forgiven.' Now some teachers of the law were sitting there, thinking to themselves, 'Why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone?' Immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, 'Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier, to say to this paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or to say, get up, take your mat, and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins.' So he said to the man, 'I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home.' He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, 'We have never seen anything like this.'" So this story is basically about 4 guys who have a friend who is paralyzed, that they have decided that they are going to get him to Jesus so that he can be healed, because they know Jesus can do this, so they're going to take him. So they carry him there, but when they get there, they see that it's too full, there's too many people, and there's no way that they can get him to Jesus. And I was thinking about this earlier. What would we have thought if they gave up at that point right when they saw that there was too many people? I mean, the paralyzed man probably would have been like, you know what, you guys tried, you carried me all the way here, you gave more effort than what a lot of people have given in my life. Maybe next time or maybe later we can get to God, but I really appreciate that. Right? I mean, I don't think we would have faulted them for at that point giving up, because that's a pretty good obstacle. We've all been in huge crowds, and trying to get to one person, especially carrying somebody on a mat, would probably have been a pretty difficult situation or quite an obstacle to overcome. But these people were so determined to serve their friend and to get him to Jesus that they did whatever it took by going to the roof and cutting a hole in someone else's property and lowering this man down to Jesus. Show of hands, how many of you are willing to destroy somebody else's property to carry out what you think God is calling you to do? Maddie, great job. I appreciate it. See, we got one person who's ready to destroy some property. I just hope God doesn't call you to my house. But really, we all have excuses. That's an obstacle that these people faced, but they weren't going to give up. They climbed up to the roof, they cut that hole, and they got their friend down to Jesus. And because of this, a couple things happened. One, their friend was healed of his problem of not being able to walk. He got up, carried his mat, and walked out. More importantly, he was forgiven of his sins. How different his life would have been if they had given up when they encountered an obstacle. Would he have ever been healed? His life could have been completely different. He would have never known what it was like to get up and walk. And more importantly, his sins were forgiven. So because of that, he's now in right standing with God, which is more important than getting up and walking. But they could have stopped right there. And not only that, it says that the man got up and carried his mat out in full view of everyone else. Everybody in that room that witnessed that left there differently than they did when they got there, all because of these friends' willingness to overcome an obstacle and get their friend to Jesus. These people left differently and got to see a miracle and got to see something amazing, all because of their perseverance. Because of their perseverance and willingness to serve their friends, his sins were forgiven, he was able to get up and walk, and all those who saw this walked away differently. Imagine how different our society could be, our friends could be, if we didn't give up when an obstacle came around, but if we battled through that and did what God was calling us to do and serve other people. The last story we're going to look at is Jesus in the garden, which is in Luke chapter 22. This story is right before Jesus was about to be arrested. He went to the garden to pray and to meet with Jesus, and his disciples went with him because he knew what was about to come. This was the night that he was going to get arrested, he was going to go on trial, and he was ultimately going to be crucified. And so we're going to read this story real quick in Luke chapter 22, verses 39 through 46, which says, Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down, and prayed, "Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Jesus knew what was going to come, and being fully God, yet fully man, he did not want to have to do this. We see a couple times that Jesus said, God, if there is any way, if you can take this cup from me, and there is any other way that we can get this done, please let that happen. God himself did not want to have to go through what he was about to go through, but he said, not my will, but yours. And that is how we need to look at the opportunity that we have of serving others. We may not be super excited about it at the beginning, and we may look for these excuses, but we need to realize that this is God's will and not our own of serving other people. Jesus was so scared and was so nervous about what was to happen, he started sweating blood, which is an actual physical condition that happens. And I'm going to try this out, and it's called hematohydrosis. It's pretty good, I think, which is caused by extreme physical or emotional stress and severe mental anxiety. Guys, nothing that we do, I hope, as serving other people is going to cause this kind of condition in our life. But God was willing to serve each and every one of us so much that he was sweating blood. And this disease is so painful, and when this happened, that your skin is unbelievably sensitive to the touch. So when somebody touches you, you are in an unbelievable amount of pain. So he was sweating and had this condition. He got arrested. He was beaten. The crown of thorns was placed on his head, all after this condition of sweating blood, which just grows the amount of pain to an unbelievable level. But God knew what was coming. Jesus knew what was coming. And instead of looking for an excuse or a reason, he said yes. And because of that, our lives were forever changed. We all make excuses, and each one of our excuses or our reasons sounds different. I don't have time. I don't know what I would do. I don't have any special skills to contribute, or they don't need me. which to us sounds like that could be a pretty valid reason. Well, they don't need me. They got better people. God needs each and every one of us. Others of us have different excuses. I like to go out on Saturday nights. Sunday mornings are the day that I get to sleep in, so having to get up that early before I have to go to work on Monday, man, that's just not my bag. Well, unfortunately, guys, that's just not how this works. An excuse is never the right answer. We may think our reason for not serving is valid, but really it's nothing more than an excuse. God wants to do great things, not only in our lives, but the lives of others around us. And that starts with us being willing and taking that first step to say yes and to serve others, regardless of the reason or the excuse or any obstacle we may face. God can use us if we are willing to say yes. We're going to watch a video here in just a second, and I want you to think of how different these kids in this video, how different their lives would be if this family looked for an excuse or an obstacle to say no instead of following the calling that God has put on their hearts and to go after these kids.
My favorite quote of all time was our furnace repairman comes into the house, stops dead in his tracks, and says, "This looks like some kind of United Nations meeting."
I was born in Bangkok,
Bangalore, India.
Connecticut,
And I was born in Romania.
Ethiopia.
which is in Africa.
In China.
Sharon is the gas pedal, and I am the brakes. Over and over she'll say, "I found this child who needs X and Y and Z, and all we'd have to do is fly over the ocean, get funding, connect this dot to here, and it'd be done."
We're such victims of our culture because our culture tells us your kids have to look perfect and be in all the perfect schools, and you can't do that with a big family. But if you just concentrate on what's important, the rest will follow. People discouraged us. They thought we were going to ruin our lives by taking all these special kids, and they said, "You don't know what to do." And it's true that we had no experience and we didn't really know how to raise them, but you see what happens with unconditional love. You give a person unconditional love and they blossom.
Careful, Poppy. Never know what happened next.
I feel like having these kids has really helped us find our life, find our meaning, find our purpose.
It took me decades to figure this out, but there's no physical thing that you can buy that's actually going to give you true peace and happiness. And the pure joy that will come from a rescue and a ransom of a child's life is probably the most satisfying thing you can imagine. We talk about adoption. We tell them they're adopted, and we kind of tell them, you know, being born into a family, you don't even decide that. It kind of happens biologically, but when you're adopted, your parents looked out at the whole world and picked you. You think that they don't really know the gravity of them being rescued or saved. Then you'll see them in an external setting, like one of them is in front of 300 people last Friday night, and he tells people that he probably wouldn't be alive if he hadn't been adopted by his family. Those are like the goosebump moments when you go, he's got it.
All Romania, at least at the time when I was born, when you were born with a deformity, quote quote, it was considered a curse by God. I was kind of distanced and not treated right and kind of not really getting any care that a normal baby should, which is why when I was 1.5 years old, I weighed 9 pounds. It was rough in the first year of my life, but I lived. But no matter where you were before, it's like where you can be now, your past doesn't define that. This family has proven that, and it's just like you have a dying boy from Romania or starving kids from Africa, and you bring them to a place where they can be, I guess, human to the fullest, and that's a generous thing. Family is everything.
Family's fun. Interesting.
His family is just people you can be a fool around and they'll still love you.
Awesome.
No, should I do the Dennehy face?
Family is something that I can count on.
Family is adoption.
Man, there's a couple lines that I hear in that video. She said, focus on the important, and the rest is going to fall into place. And the dad said, there's no physical thing that you can buy that's going to bring true happiness. We look for so many reasons not to serve when really we should be looking for any reason and any opportunity we have to do just that. Nobody would have faulted this family for not traveling around the world and spending who knows how much money to adopt all these kids that weren't their own. If they had done one, we would have praised them and thought that they did the greatest thing in the world. But this was a calling that is on their heart that they said, it doesn't matter. We'll fly across the ocean and we'll get this funding and we'll connect with these people and we'll get this person into our house. And because of this, those kids' lives have been changed forever. We all have that same opportunity to bring about the same change if we just say yes. And if looking at the excuses of Moses and then seeing the great that he did and then these other stories and this phenomenal video, if it doesn't want to make you just jump up and find a place to serve, I'm going to give you a few more reasons in the last few minutes that we have together as to why serving is so important. First, serving allows us to experience miracles. Moses experienced miracle after miracle after miracle just because he said yes. The parting of the Red Sea, he struck a rock when the people needed water, and water flowed out of that rock. When the Israelites were in battle, Moses had to keep his hands raised, and as long as his hands were raised, they were winning the fight. But as soon as he lowered his hands because he was getting tired, they began to lose. So we read that Moses put somebody on his right and somebody on his left to hold his hands up for him so that they could win the battle. Guys, we're going to get tired and we're going to get worn down, but I promise God is going to put somebody on our right and somebody on our left to hold our hands up so that we can finish serving. The second one is serving allows us to experience the joy and peace that comes from obedience. 1 Peter 4:10 through 11 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and the power forever and ever. We can experience joy and peace just by obeying God. And God has called us to serve him by serving others. And we need that joy and that peace. The next one is serving is a form of worship. It is a way to express gratitude for what Jesus has done and a way to share the love and grace that we've been giving. If we really love God the way that we say we love God, then there was no way that we couldn't do this and disobey God. Our love for God needs to pour out of our actions by serving others. Otherwise, how much do we really love God? Do we love him like we say we do? Are we willing to overcome excuses and obstacles to serve him? Or are we looking for a way out? Serving increases our faith. In Ephesians 3:20 it says, God can do anything, far more than you can ever imagine, guess, or request. And considering God can do some pretty phenomenal things, it is definitely going to increase our faith. Moses witnessing what he witnessed and doing what he was able to do, there's no way you can deny that his faith didn't increase throughout his life. This family that we saw in the video, there's no way you can tell me that their faith hasn't grown through adopting these kids and seeing how they're able to live and how they have changed just by saying yes. Serving increases our faith. And finally, serving allows us to experience God's presence in new ways. As we serve and encourage others and they find healing, we are encouraged. When we serve, we get to experience God's presence. If we are Christ followers, we should be striving daily to feel the presence of God in our life. And if serving others is a way that we can feel that presence, then I'm in. And we should all be looking for opportunities to do the same thing. For those of you who may not know, I have a 6-year-old daughter. She's almost 7, and just about any opportunity I have to bring her up, I do. She's my little best friend and my little twin, and we do everything together. And when I tell her to clean her room, and if you're a parent and you tell your kids to do this, there's normally one of two responses that you're going to get. One is when I tell Parker to clean her room, she throws a fit. She begins to blame her little sister for making the mess, and then we argue and fight back and forth. And just to let you know, I've never lost that battle. I'm undefeated. But at the end of that battle, she's going to clean her room, either because I've tapped her on the butt or she stood in the corner or whatever it was. She's going to clean that room. And I've never said this. My mom is here, but she always said, because I said so. I've not ever said that to my daughter strictly because my mom said I would once I had kids, so it's been in my mind. You can't say that. Just make up a reason. But she's going to clean that room because it needs to get cleaned. But there's also a second response that I want from her to tell me, and that's, Parker, go clean your room, and she says, yes, sir. And there's a couple reasons why she says, yes, sir. One is because she loves me, and one is because she respects me. And when God tells us to do something, we have two responses. We can fight and we can battle and we can argue, or out of the love and respect that we say we have for God, we say, yes, sir, and we go do that. We may think we can't do what we're being called to do, but the reality is God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. You don't have to worry about being good at something or having time to do something, because if God is calling you to do it, there's going to be a way, and he's going to equip you and give you the strength that you need to do what he's telling you to do. Moses didn't think he was a leader or speaker. The lame man couldn't get to Jesus, but none of that stopped them. And we cannot let our circumstances stop us. We all are going to face difficult times and circumstances in our life that we may seem like are a valid reason to not have to serve at this exact time. But there is never a time when we are not going to be facing a difficult circumstance. God wants you and your willing heart, regardless of your circumstances, regardless if what is calling you to do is easy or if it's an unbelievable feat that you don't think you would ever be able to do. If God is calling you to do it, he wants you to do it. God doesn't just work through you, he wants to work in you, and that can happen by serving others. Let's pray.